Fan Nation, what is going on? I'm your host, Country, and welcome to the channel. Today, folks, I'm coming on here with some news regarding Brian Robinson Jr. After some rumors have surfaced that could we end up seeing Brian Robinson Jr. demoted? Could we end up seeing him no longer the Commanders' #1 running back? Well, folks, that's what Rigo's Rag, Hogshaven, and others is talking about. That's what many Commanders fans are potentially thinking could happen after he had some down games there at the end part of the season last year. I mean, when you look at his stats here, it's really not impressive at all. There against the Eagles, December 22nd, only 24 yards rushing. There against the Cowboys, only 10 yards rushing. Against the Bucks, 16 yards. And then there, once again, against the Eagles in the playoffs, 36 yards rushing, folks. I mean, that is not good production. That is not what the Washington Commanders seen there at the beginning part of the season. And, you know, you could probably attribute some of this to that offensive line being a little dinged up, beat up, and hurt. But at the end of the day, Brian Robinson Jr. just didn't play well there at the end part of the season. And listen at what, people saying. This is coming from Rigo's Rag. Quote, Robinson dealt with some nagging injuries that impacted his performance levels. The Washington Commanders' offensive line also suffered health issues, and their ground game suffered as a result. While the former third-round pick is capable in between the tackles, he lacks that game-changing explosiveness typically associated with the league's best. So that's what they are saying, okay? And, for the most part, I feel like all that's pretty accurate. I don't think he's got, game-changing explosiveness, like, some guys in the league does. I do believe he runs very hard. I do believe when he's healthy, he is a guy that will break tackles and make opposing defenses pay. But they go on to say this: there's a growing sense that Robinson's status could be in jeopardy. This won't be via release, but rather being demoted from the #1 spot in favor of a better option. So could the Washington Commanders end up getting a better option there at running back instead of Brian Robinson Jr.? Now, I think this is interesting because if that's the case, I think, are we talking about Austin Ekeler no longer being on this roster? Austin Ekeler, who's going on 30 years old, a guy that had a concussion last year, who I feel like at this point is, injury prone. Okay? Is that what we're talking about? The Washington Commanders potentially moving on from him? Because if you demote Brian Robinson Jr., he becomes your #2. That means Eckler's the #3 and probably doesn't even make this roster. I mean, Jeremy McNichols, I feel like at this point, played very well last year, had a 4.7 yards per carry average, ran very hard. But honestly, does it make sense for the Washington Commanders to potentially, demote Brian Robinson Jr., release Austin Ekeler, and open up some cap space, go out there and get another running back? I mean, Austin Ekeler, when you look at his dead cap penalty this year, if they released him, he would open up around $3 million of cap space, essentially, helping them go from $79 million up to almost $83 million there, Fan Nation. To me, I think this is a very, very fair argument. I feel like some of these reports being put out, some of this stuff, people's talking about, it's a good question. Okay, the Washington Commanders, the only way they're going to win a Super Bowl, in my opinion, is they got to go out there. They got to improve this roster slightly. They've got their quarterback there in Jaden Daniels. They need to add a piece or two here on the offensive line. They need to add a #2 receiver there for, Jaden Daniels to go along with Terry McLaurin. And then after that, we're talking about the running backs. Okay, that's what I think there, Fan Nation. I think we're talking about the running backs after you address the #2 receiver issue and also a piece or two here on the offensive line. Okay, until you do that, I don't see why you would address the running back position before addressing those spots. So that's the way I see it, when it comes to this roster. Then here on the defense side of the ball, I feel like, most importantly is, corner. You got to get another corner to go along with, Lattimore, Sanristel there. Okay. I feel like Sanristel done decent there on the outside, but he should be your nickel back. Lattimore should be one of your outside guys, and then you got to get somebody that's better than Benjamin St. Just. Okay. That's just the way I feel about it, folks. I'm not a Commanders fan, but I keep up with the NFC East. I keep up with these players, on a lot of these teams when it comes to the NFL. And, I just try to call it the way I see it. When I'm looking at this roster, I feel like the biggest needs is one or two pieces there on the offensive line because Sam Cosme's hurt. Okay. He's not going to be, back out there. I feel like, playing at a high level till the middle end part of the season. That's something you got to factor in. You got to bring in somebody there for him. Also, if you could, I think it'd probably be best to upgrade the position there at right tackle. I mean, Andrew Wiley, you got to get a tackle. I feel like at this, point, if you want to be better there in the trenches. So I just think there's other glaring needs that's more important than Brian Robinson Jr. and Austin Ekeler, okay, for the Commanders. Now, I'm not saying that they shouldn't address these spots. In fact, I think it's a fair argument, but that's what I think it is. I think it's a fair argument that, Brian Robinson Jr., if you're a Washington Commanders fan, or, if you, watched the Commanders last year and, you're thinking about ways you can improve the team, running back is a spot that you could look at and say, hey, Brian Robinson Jr. didn't play the greatest. Austin Ekeler, had that concussion. He struggled at times too. So, with that being said, I want to know what you guys think about this down below. Okay, what do you think the Washington Commanders should do? Do you think they should just go ahead and demote Brian Robinson Jr.? Do you think they should just go ahead and potentially release Austin Ekeler there and move on from him? Okay, I want to know what you think. I mean, I got a lot of Commanders fans that watch my channel. They know I call it the way I see it. Okay, I think there's other positions on this roster that's probably more important to address first, but I do think there is some concerns here at this spot now after the production there of Robinson Jr. there at the end part of this season. So tell me what you think down below. If you're not subscribed, make sure you hit the like button, the subscribe button, and guess what? That's all I've got.